Is anxiety who you are? I've been hearing this a lot lately, given the pandemic situation. I deal with anxious clients all the time. I receive emails from my book readers about how to manage feelings of anxiety. So it is a very popular topic right now. And nothing really bothers me more than hearing someone say that anxiety is just who they are. It's just how they are and a part of them. And the reason it bothers me is because I know that that is just not true. I know that anxiety is not something that you have to manage about yourself on a daily basis. And the reason I know this is because I used to be a very anxious person. When I was younger, I was very high strung, worried about everything, and constantly thought I was going to die. It probably had a lot to do with the way I was raised, and I'm not blaming anybody for that, but it just is what it is. Some people have traumatic experiences that make them worry. Someone dies in their family. Like Carson Daly mentions that I think his father died when he was very young. That can spawn anxiety, and if you don't recognize the experience that triggers it, you can just assume as you get older that anxiety is a part of you. So I was very worried as a kid. I had panic attacks where I was perfectly fine, and then all of a sudden I was on my knees, gasping for breath, sweating profusely. The first time it happened to me, I didn't even know that it was a panic attack. I just didn't know what was happening at all. And those panic attacks would happen not regularly, but they would kind of come out of the blue and strike me, and they were very scary. The anxiousness stayed with me for years. It wasn't until I was about 33 years old that I learned exactly what anxiety was and then worked to rid myself of it completely, to the point today that anxiety no longer is a factor in my life. Sure, things happen and I might momentarily get worried or anxious, but then I'm able to let go of it because I know that it's not a part of me. And so those moments are very infrequent, and I know how to handle them in the rare occasion that they do pop up. I'm not inhuman, so I know that it's impossible to be completely perfect about everything. But compared to the way that I was living before, I can honestly say I'm not an anxious person. So how do you go from someone that is anxious, experiencing panic attacks, and needing to manage your anxiety on a day-to-day basis to someone who can honestly say, anxiety doesn't bother me anymore? Okay, so the first thing that I'll tell you that I learned that will be helpful to you is understanding that anxiety only comes from here. And although it might seem like, well, everything comes from here, who you are comes from your brain, that is actually not true. So I don't want to throw anyone under the bus, but let me just point out a couple of things as, using an example. So Carson Daly has said that his anxiety is debilitating, and he could be on TV and suffering from a possible, triggering of a anxiety attack or panic attack, or he could be at the playground with his kids and suffer, from anxiety there. It doesn't matter what the situation is, what's going on around him, because it's all in his head. So no matter where he goes, his head is with him, therefore the anxiety is too. But he also will say, well, but anxiety makes me so sensitive to other people, and it lets me feel, music deeply. And so maybe you identify with that and you think, well, yes, I'm anxious about things, but I'm also really sensitive. I'm going to tell you right now that they have nothing to do with each other, because anxiety, again, comes from your head. But a love, appreciation, feeling moved from music has nothing to do with your brain, has only to do with your being, with your soul. Okay? When you listen to music, you're not analyzing music. You're just taking it in and feeling it in your all over body. That's why you get chills everywhere. That's why you're able to decompress, because you are feeling it. You are not thinking, criticizing, analyzing, stressing, all the things that have to do with it here. The same thing goes with connecting with people. Maybe you think, I'm really sensitive though. Anxiety doesn't make you sensitive. In fact, it will be a barrier to connecting with people. The reason that you're sensitive, again, is because you're not analyzing people when you're with them. You're not critically thinking when you're with them. You are doing something else. You are allowing your mind to shut off and really connect with them by being a great listener, by absorbing them and their energy, which has nothing to do, again, with here and everything to do with right here. And there is a very big difference between this and that. And the confusing part is that a lot of us believe that our mind makes us who we are. And if that is your case, I will recommend 2 books for you. One is, of course, mine, Cursed: Why You Still Don't Have the Relationship You Want and the 5 Cures That Can Transform Your Love Life. This book will help you, even though it's for relationships. There is a large part in here about anxiety because it is such a relationship killer. The other book is, this is going to be no surprise to anyone that knows me, The Power of Now. If you haven't read The Power of Now, it is what helped cure my anxiety. So understanding that there is a difference between your mind and your being is of the utmost importance. And understanding that your being is who you are and your mind is usually just, to be honest with you, it is good for completing tasks. It is good for creating things. But a lot of your mind is made up of conditioned thought patterns, usually of things that have happened in the past. And we sometimes subscribe to the fact that those thought patterns are just us, but they're not. And as soon as you can get your mind around that, you'll be on the right track to quelling your anxiety. So now that we've made a distinction between your mind and your being, let's talk about what your mind is doing when anxiety hits. Because it might seem like you're just living life and suddenly you're anxious. You're at work and you're typing at your computer and suddenly you get an anxiety attack, or you're at the playground watching your kids and everything's fine and then suddenly anxiety infects your body. But if you take a step back, you'll notice a very common pattern happening in those moments where you feel anxious. And what's going on in any circumstance, no matter where you are, is that your mind has suddenly left the present moment, left what you are currently doing, and jumped to an imaginary what-if future scenario. So you can be at the park with your kids watching them, thinking everything is great, and then all of a sudden somebody honks a horn, right? And that horn honking and that car screeching maybe all of a sudden projects you into the future of, what if one day my child runs into the street and gets hit by a car? And then all of a sudden you're anxious. Or maybe you're typing away at your computer and someone sends you an email and the email just sort of strikes you wrong. And then all of a sudden, instead of working on that email, your mind jumps to an imaginary future scenario and it's, oh my gosh, what if my boss doesn't think that I did my work correctly or doesn't like what I did and decides that, he's going to berate me in front of an entire room of people, or I'm going to lose my job. Again, your mind has left the present moment, the present situation, and gone to an imaginary future what-if scenario. So this is very important to know, because when I was a child, I just thought anxiety hit me out of nowhere. And then I read The Power of Now. And there's a quote in The Power of Now that says, you cannot cope with the future. You can only cope with the present moment. And when I read that, I realized that my entire life, that is what I had been trying to do. I had been trying to cope with an imaginary future scenario. And when I was trying to cope with it, I was getting anxious because you can't cope with anything that's not happening right now. It is impossible. And yet my mind kept trying to do it. So the next time you feel like anxiety strikes you, stop for a second. What are you thinking about? Are you thinking about something that's happening right now, something tangible, something you can actually deal with? Or is your mind in the future, in an imaginary projected what if scenario, trying to figure out how you would deal with that. I will tell you that 90% of the time, if not more, that is what's happening when anxiety occurs. And if you can recognize that, you have a chance to let go of it. You have a chance to disassociate yourself from what anxiety truly is. The third and final thing I'm going to say about anxiety and how to get over it is that when you notice that your mind has jumped to the future and is trying to deal with an imaginary scenario, it is very important that you take a deep breath and bring yourself back to the present moment, back to what is happening right now, and embrace what is happening right now without any thinking at all about it. You don't need to think when you're watching your children play at the playground. You don't need to think when you're just watching TV. You can shut it off, take some deep breaths, and clear your mind. This will be a very helpful practice for you to just shut off your brain. Notice when it's in the future, come back to the now and shut it off. A lot of people try to manage anxiety by saying, I'm gonna be okay. You know, that's how I manage anxiety, is by telling myself I'm going to be okay. And I understand why that works, but let me give it a little tweak. I'm gonna be okay, if you notice, is a statement in the future. And the future is where all the anxiety lies. So I would suggest changing that statement. Instead of saying, I'm gonna be okay, because again, it's in the future, say, I am okay right now. Because the truth is, you probably are okay right now. No matter where you are when anxiety strikes, if you take some deep breaths, come back to the moment you're in and say, wait a minute, I'm okay right now. I don't know how I'm gonna be the next 5 minutes from now or tomorrow or next year, but all I really have to deal with is how I am right now. And right now, I'm fine. I'm safe. I'm here. I'm being. And if you can say that to yourself, I'm okay right now, and only deal with right now, you're going to start to feel a heck of a lot better. So I hope this little tutorial was helpful for you. Again, run out and read The Power of Now, or pick up my book, Cursed. I know, again, it's a relationship book, a book about how to get over certain relationship challenges, but anxiety is a large part of this book and how to get over that. So both those books are on Amazon and on barnesandnoble.com. And I hope I hear from you if this message that I'm sending was helpful, because nothing gives me more joy than to know that I've helped someone out there, that my experience is helping you. So if it's been a positive video for you, please shoot me an email or leave a comment that it was good. If not, you can keep those thoughts to yourself that it wasn't helpful. I know that I'm certainly not going to help everyone, and I just hope that there's somebody out there that heard this and thought it was worthwhile, and because of this, you were able to help your anxiety get a little bit better.